Back in the 60s, states started forcing back bars on bikes for safety. Well, bikers weren't having it. They called them sissy bars, and then they made them taller, wilder, and straight up outlaw. It wasn't just a backrest, it was a middle finger to the man. Today, I'm keeping that tradition alive by torching and bending up a tall sissy bar for my Sportster chopper. I'm old school, and welcome to Vintage Harleys Revive. In my mind, the sissy bar needs to be as tall as the handlebars. So I grab a piece of angle iron and my level and just get an initial measurement to kind of see where we're shooting for the height on this sissy bar. And I pull my welding table out and get up set to bend this sissy bar. Today we're going to take care of three key elements, I believe, that make a bike a chopper. Number one, a proper tall sissy bar. Number two, the clearance above the front jug in the frame. And number three, the position that the headlight is mounted. So start with the sissy bar. And I'm going to use the side plates on this old backrest to hold the sissy bar in place. So we're going to use that to measure the width that we want the final bars to be coming down once we make the final bends. I'm setting up a kind of a jig so that when we heat this bar up and make this bend, we can bring it right down to the width that we want to be above these plates that we're going to mount to. Now I'm going to leave that thing nice and long so that I can make some decisions about the overall height when we finally get to mounting it to the bike. So I'm using 1/2 inch square stock solid bar to make this sissy bar out of. Now this is just raw stock 8 foot long that I picked up at my local metal supplier. I'm going to put it up on these blocks, grab my torch, and heat it right at the 4 foot mark. Without sounding like your mama or your girlfriend, when using an acetylene torch, you need to be careful. I mean, this is an explosive thing. Do your research, wear your safety gear, and be careful. That's all I'm saying. So I'm firing up this torch, and we're just gonna heat up not too much of it, because if I go too long, it's gonna bend a big old wide circle up at the top no matter what, and it'll look goofy. So I only want it to be about 2 inches long. And of course at this point we gotta move. It's gonna cool quickly, and you can see it doing that as I put it around the front bolt and then pull it down to where I've set the jig. So I clamp in the bottom of the legs as it cools so it doesn't change the width, because it definitely will as it cools. I clamp down the front and begin to make the second bends where it goes from the angle to the straight down to the plates that we're going to use to mount it to the fender at the back of the strut. So we'll go ahead and take care of the other side. And notice here, I'm not heating up a large wide portion, just about 1 inch long, so that I can get the bend right where I want it. And I'm clamping these things down, not just pulling them in, because they're twisting side to side as they heat and cool. So here's the basic shape of our sissy bar. Now I want to bend the tip back, so I put it in the vise, and then I clamp the legs so that as I heat the tip, they're not going to be falling off to the side when it gets really hot. We'll go ahead and do this. Now notice something here. I'm heating the outside of the bend more than the inside of the bend. I never even moved to the other side, and then I'm going to go ahead and just pull this thing over as far as I think it's going to look good as it leans back on the bike. I get to throw it up there and get my first look at it, and I'm super happy with it. So we'll let that sissy bar cool down and move on to the headlight. Now, there's nothing that says where this thing needs to be. What I want is it to look like a chopper. So this headlight needs to be positioned in a way that makes the front of this bike look like a chopper. So I'm going to build a custom mount. Now, this could be something simple. I guess you could try to find it online. Man, I want custom parts on this bike wherever I can have them. I mean, if somebody makes something and it's cheap, I'm going to grab it. If I can make it out of just angle iron or stock metal that I have and the tools that I have in my shop, then that's the way I'm going to make it. So here I am centering up the bolt holes, and I'm going to go ahead and snap punch these so that we get them exactly where we want them. Throw it up onto the drill press and get these holes drilled. Now I start with a smaller drill bit first, go through with like 3/16, and then out to the size of the bigger bolt that I want. That saves my drill bits and it makes the drilling a whole lot easier, and I'm not sharpening my drill bits all the time. So we'll go ahead and we'll get this center for the headlight itself drilled out and get these bolt holes up to the size that they need to be. And once we get that done, we'll throw it up onto the bike and just get an initial look at where this new bracket is going to put this headlight. Now I'm probably going to spend way too much time making this little bracket. But there's an element of craftsmanship here, and I feel like I should make this as good as it could actually be, as good as I can make it. Now, I don't have any formal training in welding. I don't have any formal training in metalworking. Everything that I know is just hands-on, learn how to do it, make mistakes, and figure it out. It's the way I've learned everything in my life. It's the way I prefer to learn in my life. It's the way my brain works. I'd rather take 3 times as long, figure it out for myself, and then I know how to do it, and it works for me. So you do the process you need. I'm going to spend way too much time on this bracket, and when I'm done, I think it's going to look good. And that is all that matters when you're building your chopper, okay? Nobody tells you what your bike needs to look like. If you want it to look rough and not finished, rather than taking all the time that I take to get this bracket into the condition that I want it in, then you should do that too. It's your vision. It's your thoughts on what a chopper should look like. It doesn't have to look like mine. It doesn't have to look like anybody's. And it can be 100% yours, your personality brought out in the shape and finish of your own motorcycle, your chopper. You're not going to ride in to some event at the Harley dealer, and let me tell you what's gonna happen, man, and I've seen it happen. You're gonna pull this $1,500 Sportster up there that you've spent all this time making your own, and they're gonna walk right by the $50,000 bagger, and there's gonna be a crowd around your $1,500 chopper. I'm telling you, I've seen it happen, and it's pretty doggone satisfying. So as I clean this thing up with the flapper wheel and really get it down to the final shape that I had in my mind, I think we've transformed a piece of angle iron into a custom bracket that puts the headlight exactly where we want it to be. So we throw it up on the bike here and get this final look, tighten it up on the bracket, and step back, and you know what? That is what I was in my mind. That is what I was looking for. So let's move on to creating this space above this front jug, okay? I don't want any wires up here. I don't want the coil up here. I don't want the cables running up here. I want this space above this front jug between the frame and the top of that front jug. I want it empty. And I'll tell you what, I got more stuff that's gonna go on the pile of discarded parts because who needs a horn? I mean, seriously, and especially a big ugly ass horn like what this thing's got on it. So we're going to take the coil, which was underneath that part of the frame in front of that jug, and we're going to get it out of there. And we just keep pulling this wiring back, and I got to tell you, I think I'm going to end up rewiring this whole bike from scratch. But we're going to get all the parts exactly where we want them, the coil where we want it, the headlight where we want it, and when we get all the parts exactly where we want them, we'll go back and decide what we're going to do with the wiring. So I'm going to use, rather than buying, you know, your local supplier's coil relocation kit, I'm going to use the bracket that came on the coil. So now I'm cleaning this thing up, and my thought here is I'll just throw it on the welding table, grab some flat stock, right? And we'll just weld a piece of flat stock across this on the inside and make the bracket that's going to put it exactly where I want it. Not where DK Customs, or I'm not trying to slam anybody, decided they wanted it, where I want it. So getting everything clean, you know, when you go to weld, you got to have everything as clean as it can be. Stick is a little more forgiving. MIG a little more, is forgiving. TIG, I'm finding out as I'm, you know, figuring out and practicing TIG welding that that's a type of welding that, man, it's got to be absolutely spotless. So we're going to go throw these welds on the inside. That way, when I finish this bracket on the outside, you won't have to look at my ugly ass welds. So shut everything down. Don't forget to shut your gas off. Done that many times, and then that delays everything because you're headed to the welding store to replace a cylinder that's absolutely empty. So we'll take the cutoff wheel here, cut off our flat stock, and then I prefer this flapper wheel. Now these come in different grits, so this is a coarse one, but you know what's nice about a flapper wheel is it's a little more forgiving than a grinding wheel, and you can kind of take it off a little bit at a time and really get it smoothed out. I'm really happy with the way that this has turned out. So I'm gonna pull the tank off here so I can mark the hole where I need to drill it. And then snap punch this thing. If you've not got one of these snap punches, man, those things are awesome, and they're not very expensive on Amazon. So we're going to get the right bolt size here for the hole that's already pre-drilled in the motor mount. And we'll go ahead here and get this drilled out to the right size and get this sucker mounted up here. It's a little tight. Obviously, we're putting it where it's not supposed to be, but I got the bolts up in there, and then we'll drop the coil down on here and go ahead and tighten it up. I gotta tell you, I really like this mounting position. I don't think it's gonna give us any trouble. We'll be able to bring the wires in from the back where you probably won't hardly even see them. So I'm throwing the tank back up here. Just want to make sure I've got clearance all around. Next is gonna put some plug wires on it, and if you'll notice on every one of my Harleys, I've got these Accel plug wires. Back in the early 80s, I bought a 1974 Camaro. I was a 16-year-old, and man, everybody had these yellow Accel plug wires. So I run them on all my choppers because it's kind of a hot rod thing. And if you've ever done this, it's kind of a trick. Use some silicone spray to be able to slide this thing over the top, and then the silicone spray, you know, wipes right off without any problem. And then you can pull this down and snap this in. Now, I don't know if this is the final form on these plug wires, but I'm pretty happy overall with the look that I've ended up with right here. Sissy bar is bent. The headlight mount is complete. The coil relocation is done. Now we're going to move back in here and use the original backrest that came with the bike. We're going to use the side plates to mount this new Sissy bar. Man, I've come a long way with this bike. Initially, I didn't even think I was going to do anything to it. And then once I got started on it, I really began to get a vision for what I wanted this bike to look like. And as I go to put this Sissy bar on, that vision is starting to come to life. I love this work, and I can't express enough to you my thanks for your support. And if I could, which I never do, which is say, if you could like, subscribe, and share my videos, it'd help me out a great deal. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna throw this Sissy bar up, and this is really long. So I realized I got this really great big long level instead of using a piece of angle iron and a small level. I'm gonna mark this at the 12 inches I think I need to cut off of it. Now, I'm going a little long because obviously can't add it back on there very easily once you cut it off there. So level with the handlebars is where my brain goes on a chopper. It might need to be lower than that because the bike kind of leans back a little bit, but here it is, done. It really is becoming the bike that I had in my mind when I started this process. And it has been a great journey, and we have got a long way to go. I'm glad you're here with me, and thank you so much for watching this video. I'm old school. Be good to yourself. We'll see you next time on Vintage Harleys Revive.